Hi guys, welcome back from the break. So we're going to discuss laughing gas help nitrous oxide. I know Andrew's written an article recently on Tower Hamlets News on that. So Andrew, do you want to talk us about the consultation and what it's about and what the actual problem is with these laughing gas canisters?
Okay, so the laughing gas canisters are those little silver canisters that you find lying pretty much all over Tower Hamlets on street corners. And basically, when you inhale them and you do it via balloon, you kind of suck them in like that. It gives you a temporary high. And apparently you giggle and it's called laughing gas because apparently it makes you laugh. But it does have some health implications as well. But the main problem that it causes is it quite often it sort of accompanies antisocial behavior. So unfortunately, too often people kind of have these parties on the street and they will inhale these canisters. And because it's a short high, is you have to inhale lots of them. And that's why you find so many of these things on the ground, is because you take one and then 5 minutes later you take another one. And quite often, there's other forms of antisocial behavior in terms of loud noise and people just being a little bit obnoxious. And for some strange reason, which I've never understood, is they never pick up after themselves. So they leave on the ground the canisters, the balloons, the fried chicken boxes and all the rest of it, and they never sort of clear it away. So it's kind of the noise and the antisocial behavior that's really the main issue. But as I said, there are some negative health consequences, especially if you're using them a lot. But they're not illegal to actually use, and they're actually used in the food industry. So if you have a cream dispenser, you need these canisters as well to help the cream spurt out. So you can buy them legally. But so the problem is, if the police or a Tower Hamlets council enforcement officer turns up and asks or tells people stop using NOX, which is another word for these canisters, the police have no powers to actually stop their use. They can politely ask, but they can't stop their use unless the person is driving and driving in an erratic manner. So a public space protection order was something introduced in 2014 by the government. And it basically allows Tower Hamlets Council to write some very specific rules to deal with a certain type of antisocial behavior. It can only last for 3 years. It has to be for a defined area. And in this case, it will be for the whole of Tower Hamlets. And it has to be consulted on. So if people don't agree with it, then it doesn't go ahead. So what the council are currently doing is a online consultation, which ends on Monday. So which is why it's so important, if you feel strongly about this, to respond to that consultation before, I think, 5 o'clock on Monday, with your views on this. And basically what would happen if this were to go live, it would give the police and the Theos the power to actually tell people to stop using the NOX canisters. And if they didn't do it, or if the police felt it was appropriate, they could issue a £100 fixed penalty notice. So this doesn't give the police like huge powers to kind of arrest you or throw you in jail or whatever. It simply gives them powers to tell you to stop and to issue a £100 fine. Then after 3 years, it ends. Lambeth were the first London borough to do this back in 2015. They've renewed it again because they've found this useful. And the last point I'll make is that we have the highest rates of antisocial behavior in the country in Tower Hamlets. This is an attempt to try and, give the police and Theos more powers to deal with a specific type of problem.
So is it similar? So I've come across towns outside of London where near the town centre, they say no public drinking. And so it's similar to that in the sense that you have a perfectly legal activity, but because of the high concentration or because it's in a certain area, it causes ASB. So you basically limit that activity in a public space. So in certain towns, you can't drink in public, kind of ish, because of the disturbance. And this is to do with nitrous oxide. What's the next step, Andrew, after this consultation? How would we know what's going to happen to it? So Monday it closes. Then what happens?
So they will gather all the responses and they will then summarise those responses, probably in a cabinet report to Mayor John Biggs. And as I said, you can't introduce these unless you have evidence that there's a problem. And obviously the consultation responses are part of that evidence, and also that the consultation responses are supportive of the introduction to this. So if you don't have those two things, then you're obviously liable to legal challenge, and it won't go ahead. But they've done this in Lambeth, and it appears to work. And interestingly, some of the council officers doing this work for Tower Hamlets used to work for Lambeth Council. So they've had experience of doing this. So my expectation is that this will go ahead and it will go live at some point. They'll have to put up signs around the borough to tell people that it's live. And then it will last for 3 years. And after 3 years, you have to basically reconsult again and go through the process again. You can't just extend it, as long as you want. You have to kind of prove in 3 years' time that there are, still reasons for doing this.
So if everything goes well, are we looking at implementation in 2021 or 2022? What's your...
given that it's February, I don't see any reason why it couldn't happen this year. There's a bit of legal work to do, but as I said, the officers doing this work have the right experience. So I see no practical reason. And actually, so I did a motion at Tower Hamlets Council in September 2018 asking for this to happen. So 2021 is long enough, I think, to do it.
Got you. The other thing that's come up again on Tower Hamlets news portal is this story about the Truman Brewery. It's a bit like one of those East End gangster movies where they just got in the diggers and basically removed these granite blocks. So if people granite is really heavy stones. It's one of the most heaviest stone you can get. So they just took ripped up an entire courtyard of granite rock. But I think what was more disturbing or kind of interesting from my point of view is it took Tower Hamlets Council about a week to basically do something about it, even though people are saying, look, they're ripping everything out. Have you what's your thoughts on that? Why there's inaction by Tower Hamlets Council on this? Well,
there's a big battle, I guess, over the future of Brick Lane, which is, does it become gentrified or not? Because Brick Lane has this fantastic kind of character and feel and vibe, and it's really popular with tourists. And that courtyard, and I was actually there when we were last allowed to be out, I think towards the end of 2019. And I remember lots of people kind of sitting outside, enjoying themselves and the tables in that courtyard. And the problem is that courtyard is also very close to the City of London, and it's potentially very valuable property. So it's basically a fight in effect over the kind of properties and the access to property that we have in this area, which is an important tourist area and therefore generates lots of jobs and income for us. Or does it become a more corporate environment as a sort of annex to the City of London?
I think the other thing is one thing that got a lot of campaigners agitated was the lack of housing. So any proposal, they're not providing any housing, especially in an area that's got very chronic housing shortage. But if you look around Brick Lane, it's surrounded by residential houses. You've got the sort of like townhouses towards the Spitalfields end, but you've got the Chicksand estate as well, so like running parallel. So it's kind of weird, like we're allowing development without looking at the houses. But wider, if you go down Bethel Green area, we've let all these hotel developments to go through. I think about 2,000 or 1,500 hotel rooms, but in an area that's got chronic housing, it just seems kind of crazy as to why, as planners or as a council, we're not emphasizing on housing or getting developers to think about housing. Have you come across that kind of?
Well, it was actually sort of at the last, I think it was development committee. There was actually this exact discussion over a sort of a hotel that was going to be built, I'm trying to remember, in Bethnal. Yeah, it's actually very close to Bethnal Green. And the argument for the hotel was that because it was kind of on one side a busy road and on the other side there was some pubs and sort of, well, not nightclubs, basically late night activity, there are sort of new rules that basically sort of say that you can't put residential in places which generate lots of noise at nighttime. And the concern was if you put residential housing in there, people wouldn't be able to sleep because of the pubs next door, but those pubs came first. And the argument that was, again, actually the developer started off wanting to build residential, but in the end they decided for that particular site, actually the hotel was the right solution. And there are a couple of other areas where I wouldn't put people. I mean, there's a development by Aspen Highway, which is not a very nice road, and I wouldn't want to put family-sized homes next to that. And in that case, they wanted to put student housing in, and I was okay with that, because if you have student housing, it means students are less likely to then rent family-sized homes, which leaves it free for other people. Yeah. So I'm not always against. And the other thing I like about hotels is they are good job generators, and for different types of jobs at different pay levels and different skill levels. So I'm not anti-hotels, but it's going to be very interesting post-pandemic to see whether demand for hotels is the same as it was before. Because also on the Isle of Dogs, we have lots of new hotels in the planning process as well.
You never know. They could all be turned into social housing. The way things are going, I remember you posting that map on Twitter about people's habits changing. So like you got red areas, you got blue areas, where out in the suburbs or where people live, that's where people are more and more working. Where around the city of London and Canary Wharf, it's like the employment creation has stopped. So I think COVID is a game changer in the sense that I think we just have to go back to the drawing board in this, and that's why we need to ask people as to what how they're using public amenities or space during COVID and how they intend to use it post COVID. And I personally think that home working is going to be something that's here to stay, and that's something we need to take into account. But I think the Truman Brewery campaign is going to run on, and I think it'd be interesting to see any other what happens with it, any future developments. But yeah, let's wait and see. So we're going to just go into a break now, a commercial break. But after the break, Andrew's going to give us an update with the latest on the Chinese embassy that's moving in to Tower Hamlets. So come back, join us after the break, and we're going to talk about the Chinese embassy.